Okay, so what I want to do right now is to start talking about the adolescent stage or the teenage years. So it's anywhere from around seventh grade on through the high school years and until the completion of the college years. But our focus will be in the context of junior high and senior high years. Okay, so we'll focus on junior high and senior high years. Okay. Okay. So one of the things we found at this stage is the increase in sexual awareness. And the other thing is that with sexual awareness comes sexual maturation, which represents the ability to reproduce. And so it's important that we are aware of what signs kind of represents that for females and for males in terms of sexual maturation. For females, the beginning of menstrual cycles, and for males, is the production of sperm. It's the production of sperm. So now students tend not to get confused much in terms of the sign for females, but what we do need to be careful of with males that we don't confuse the production of sperm with the ejaculation of semen. So a young male may actually have earlier experiences of ejaculation, of emission, but they may not necessarily have produced viable sperm early on. And again, a lot of times we think of ejaculation as being a sign of sexual maturation, and it really is the production of sperm. So we need to be careful here. When we talk about sexual maturation for males, we should think about the production of sperm, not the ejaculation. Ejaculation is not one of the signs. Okay. Ejaculation will not be considered as one of the signs for sexual maturation. So when we talk about adolescent years, one of the things we want to look at is the different experiences from males and females in terms of what we often refer to as early maturation versus on-time maturation, and then also late maturation. And here we are talking about not emotionally mature or socially mature, but what we are really focusing on right now is in terms of physical maturity. Physical maturity. Okay. So when you were going through puberty, you will know somebody in your grade who matured early. So you probably know someone who clearly was often what we refer to as kind of late bloomers, and maturing much earlier than the peers can have some advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so for male, there are at least 3 advantages associated with early physical maturation. So for male, there are at least 3 advantages associated with early physical maturation. Okay. So obviously one of the main advantage would be sports. And clearly if you have physically reached or more into your growth spurt early, and you are gonna be taller, and you are gonna be heavier, and you are also going to be stronger. I mean, that's clearly gonna give you an advantage in most sports. There's no doubt about that. Okay. And also we tend to find that early maturation tends to give you higher social status among peers. And it has a lot to do with appearance, the physical appearance. Now, these boys who mature earlier, now they look much older and mature and more mature than their peers, and that tends to give them advantages in terms of giving them these leadership roles. So they are more likely to take this leadership role. Okay. That could be considered as one of the advantages. Now, there's one other major place where they have a clear advantage, and it's still somewhat tied closely into status, popularity, and the sports aspect of it. And so what do they have a clear advantage against some of the other males? It will be girls. And think about it, if I mature early, then even within my own grade, girls are probably gonna be more interested in me than other boys, other males of the same chronological age. Because what? Girls they are often maturing 2 years earlier than boys, so they are not going to be interested in those who are in their chronological age. Because what? Because these boys look like kids. They still look kind of like kids, like boys. They are still boyish. Have this boyish appearance. So girls are not going to appreciate that. But if I mature early, these girls they are gonna be interested in me, so that gives me an advantage, So that would be another advantage. And not only that, the males that mature earlier, they may even have the opportunity to attract the interest of some older girls as well. So they clearly have some advantage in that area. Now there's probably one disadvantage associated with maturing early for males. I mean, there are probably more, but one kind of stands out, right? So one of the things that happens is, and this is true for females as well, but as these males begin to mature early and begin to look more adult-like, there may be expectations that they are now what? They are not adults, right? There are expectations that they should behave more like adults, because they do look like adults. So the society expects them to be adults mentally, emotionally, and behaviorally. Physically, they do look older. They look older, but they may not necessarily emotionally or socially or even cognitively, have matured in the same way that they have physically. So again, the disadvantage would be unrealistic expectation put on them. That's been put on them. That would be the major disadvantage. Now females, what about females who mature early? Clearly, one of the advantages, and again, I think it's one of the those things that maybe tends to go both ways. So imagine I'm a seventh grade girl. I have matured early, and I'm gonna get lots of attention. Get lots of attention from guys. I'm gonna be noticed. Guys are gonna pay attention to me, and not only guys, but older guys. In particular, older guys, because what? A lot of the guys within my own age group likely have not matured yet. So guys in my age have not had sexual awareness yet, and so these girls do get a lot of attention from older guys. And what's the disadvantage of that? I think part of the difficulty is, are they emotionally mature enough and cognitively mature enough to handle that attention in ways that tend to be positive for them? What do I mean by that? So in many cases, I hate to say that, I hate to say that, but it's still true, in terms of some of the sexual advances. I mean, do these girls, do they have the emotional maturity to handle some of that pressure, some of that with self-esteem that maybe still a little bit fragile as a seventh grader, as a seventh grade girl? The self-esteem may be still a little bit fragile, still weak. Do they have this ability to resist the sexual advance from much older guys? And I believe that attention which can really boost a self-esteem, but at the same time, there's maybe some real vulnerabilities that I would feel inclined to have to respond to that, some of that pressure, in order for guys to still like me and want to be with me. So it's very hard for them to resist that sexual advance, and because they are going to worry that, if I don't do this, my boyfriend is going to leave me and all that. So at least so this can be one of the disadvantages for girls who mature much earlier. And clearly, somewhat like with males, status is going to be impacted some, and popularity within groups clearly will be affected as well. So girls who mature early, they do have this advantage. They get attention. Not only do they get attention, but they also tend to have much higher social status in their peer groups. So another disadvantage is that early maturation for girls tend to lead to negative parent-child relationships. So it's interesting that those males that mature earlier, and yet parents don't tend to be overly concerned about dating. But for females, if you have a seventh grader, if you have a girl who is a seventh grader who looks much older than seventh grade, what's the best parenting practice? What would be the best parenting practice? So based on what I know about what's going on during this stage of life, I would say, just lock her in her room until she's 21. It's I'm kind of joking around, of course, but as a parents, we would be worried about this dating thing. I mean, the reality is that those who date earlier are more likely to have sexual relationships earlier, and also the possibility of pregnancy. There's this positive correlation going on here. Okay. If you start dating much earlier, you are going to have sexual intercourse much earlier, and the possibility of pregnancy. Right? And so for some girls, that would seem almost like imprison, especially if a lot of the peers are allowed to date. So if I see all my friends are allowed to date, but me, I'm going to feel like I'm in prison, and I won't feel happy about what I have right now. So it does have some impact on the parent-child relationship. I won't be happy about my parents, and it does tend to increase the level of intensity and potential conflict around that issue. So to sum up, what we found is that the positive effects of maturing early seem greater for males than for females. the advantage for males tend to outweigh the disadvantage that females tend to experience. So maturing early, it's great if you are a guy, if you are a male, but not so much if you are a female. And on-time maturation just simply means that again, adolescents are kind of maturing with the majority, occurring at a time when the majority of their peers are going through the same changes. On-time maturation tends to be more positive for both males and females. If I'm going through puberty and I see everyone else is kind of going through the same changes at the same time, I would feel pretty what? I would feel pretty normal, right? So I hate to use the word normal and abnormal, but you will feel normal when you are going through the same changes. At the same time, everybody in your class is going through the same changes. You are going to feel comfortable, so you're kind of right where everyone else is, and that feels comfortable. Okay, that gives you comfortable. That makes you feel comfortable. Now, finally, what about late maturers? I don't know if anyone in this class, if that was your experiences, but my guess is you know someone who that was their experience. I think it's a good point and probably an accurate point. I think from the perspective of the adolescents, they're overriding. If you are being a late bloomer, if you are being a late maturer, you have this overriding feeling is. I think that the overriding feeling is, or at least you are questioning or wondering or even worrying. Is there something wrong? Is there something wrong? I mean, again, if I'm a late mature, everyone else, especially the early matures, have already started engaging in adult-like activities. They are passing through, and the majority of my peers, they already become adult-like, and now I'm going to start to feel out of place. I'm beginning to worry. Am I alright? Is there something wrong? Will I experience the same changes that everyone else seems to have gone through? And that can be really distressing. That can be real distressing. Wondering if and when that's going to happen, basically. Okay. All right. We have looked at physical development of adolescence, and what we want to begin to do is to look at cognitive development of this stage. And there are so many unique things that are happening during adolescence stage. Cognitively speaking, they are now at what is called formal operational stage. So in middle childhood, children were at concrete operational stage, and we talk about that. We talk about the things that are important at that stage. Now, let's talk about a formal operational stage. Introspection. So one of the important things happening at formal operational stage is that children are now able to do what's called introspection. What this means is that they are now able to think about thoughts and beliefs. Now again, go back to middle childhood. If I told you something, if you were in elementary school kids, if I told you some information, what are you most likely going to do with what I told you? So generally speaking, you are more likely to believe it and not questioning what I told you, right? And part of the reason why you are not gonna question it is you probably won't spend a lot of time thinking about what I told you. Mom and dad and teacher told me some factual factual information, and I'm more likely to just accept it at face value and believe what my teacher or my dad, my mom told me. I'm more likely to just accept that information at face value and don't question it. You know? But with adolescents, they start to think about what they think. So when someone shares an idea or a thought or even a fact, all of a sudden the adolescent stops and says, what do I think about that? So they start asking themselves, what do I think about this information that I just learned? They really begin to form their own opinions, their own thoughts, their own beliefs. And parents feel that parents can feel that change, Now parents start feeling, I don't understand why my child all of a sudden is doing what seemingly what is now all of a sudden is rebelling and arguing with me all the time. Right? So I used to tell them something, what I think, and what I think they should do, and they will just do it. They will just do what I tell them to do. And now all of a sudden, I share my wisdom, I share my wisdom with them, and they all of a sudden they don't like it anymore. They don't agree with what I said, and they want to argue about it. So parents often get confused. Parents feel this change. Right. The other thing is they seem to spend a lot of time by themselves. They seem to spend a lot of time thinking about stuff by themselves. So now if you think about it, all of a sudden you become aware of your own thoughts processes. It's like opening up a whole new door. I can actually really begin to think about what I think about this. Beginning to think about what I think about this or that. And it's out of that I'm beginning to form my own opinions, my own beliefs, my own values, and whether others share the same beliefs with me. So I'm going to spend a lot of time, there are going to be a lot of solitary moments as an adolescent. You're going to think about stuffs by yourself. In addition to introspection, another characteristic is that now their thought process become more abstract. If you remember when we were talking about middle childhood, one of the limitations was that of abstract, hypothetical thinking. Middle childhood children, they don't have that. They don't have abstract, hypothetical thinking. That's one of their cognitive limitations. So middle childhood was pretty much tied to or kind of linked to what they knew, what their experiences has been at this point. And that's where the term concrete came from, Now as I begin to evolve through this stage, all of a sudden I begin to think more abstractly. I begin to think questions such as, what if? What if that? What if this? That tend to be more of a question that adolescents like to ask. Because now they can think abstractly. Think in abstract terms. Another characteristic is sometimes referred to as pseudo stupidity. It's kind of characterizing thought processes of adolescence. And that is the adolescent's tendency to make some things more complex than they really are. Okay, that's their tendency to make some things more complex than they really are. Now, a lot of this pseudo stupidity has to do with introspection and thinking in abstract terms. Because now adolescents are able to look at and think about both that in terms of their ability to think more abstractly. They are able to look at situations differently from different dimensions. And I think what happens sometimes is the young adolescents, sometimes they tend to overly analyze a given situation and to think about it in more ways than necessarily. As adults would look at a situation that they are confronted with and see it as being a fairly simple decision or a very simple explanation to what has happened. And for young adolescents who is able to look at that in multiple dimensions, even though that may not necessarily in this situation will often make it more evolved, more complex than it really is. Okay. So I think college students have a tendency to do that to do that as well. So my guess is there's probably one or two of you in this room that's taking a test on a given day, and you read the question, and your first instinct is most of the time what the correct answer is. That will be your first instinct. Okay, that will be the correct answer. Your first instinct is often the correct answer. But then what do? You second guess yourself. You begin to think about it. You think about how the professor is trying to trick you. You think about how the professor is trying to trick you. Or what the missing word is in there someplace. And then all of a sudden you find yourself changing the answer. We sometimes tend to make the questions much more difficult than it was ever intended to be. But you take any question and you think about it hard enough. If you take any question and you think about it hard enough, you can probably make almost most of those answers somehow fit. If you are talking about multiple choice question, all of those answers will seem to fit if you think hard enough. That means you're overthinking it. You overly reading it. You just overly process it, and that's what the adolescence does sometimes. They just over process. So I do think that college students share this characteristic as well. And then there's the adolescent's imaginary audience. This one's fun. This one's interesting. So this is the tendency to think that they are the center of everyone else's world. They are often at the center of everyone else's world. Again, it goes back to some of the characteristics of egocentrism that we talked about during the toddler stage of life. Early childhood. A little bit different at this period of life, but the adolescents basically believe that the world kind of evolved around them. And they also believe that all eyes are on them all the time. All eyes are on them all the time. I mean, adolescents can be really self-conscious. They believe that they are being watched all the time. Oh no, I shouldn't pick my nose. Not even in the bathroom when I'm alone. Because someone else might be watching it. Well, not to that extreme, but you get the idea. You tend to think adolescents tend to think that everyone is watching them. everyone is watching them. But the truth is that everyone is busy with something else. Is busy doing their own things. But the adolescents tend to think that, I'm the center of the universe. Everybody is watching me. This is a concept called imaginary audience. So that explains a lot why young adolescents can spend an hour and a half to get ready for school in the morning. And why is that? Because I can only look good. I have to look perfect. So there's this basic belief that when I walk out that door and I hit the school hallways, the whole world is looking at me and focusing on me. As soon as I walk out that door and I hit the school hallways, that's why I have to look perfect. And final characteristic is what we call the personal fable. The personal fable is a belief held by many adolescents, telling them that they are special and unique, so much so that none of life's difficulties or problems will affect them, regardless of their behavior. It doesn't matter how they tend to think that it doesn't matter what they do. Okay, they are invincible, basically. I find it interesting that the adolescents works really hard to be unique, to be their own individual. So we see this a lot of times in terms of dress and certain behavior. And at the same time, particularly the young adolescents, they also spend a lot of time doing what that almost contradicts their uniqueness. They are trying to fit in. So they are trying to be unique, but at the same time trying to fit in. And I found that interesting. So you find them a lot of times conforming to some peer group where they need to look and act just like everyone in their group. While at the same time, they scream out, I want to be my own unique individual. And a lot of times that's the scream that goes to parents and family members. So again, the personal fable. And research found that personal fable can be a potential explanation for risk-taking behavior. Because they believe that they are unique and invincible. Everybody else speeding, they might get into an accident, but not me. I'm invincible, I'm unique. Okay. Other people, they speed and they may crash into other cars, but not me. That won't happen to me. Or other people, they smoke, they will get lung cancer, but no, not me. I'm unique. I'm invincible. Things like that. So research found that personal fable can be a potential explanation for this risk-taking behavior. Okay, that's it.